Hello and welcome to Learning Access 2013. My name is Mike Henry and this is the fourth video from Tutorial 1. In this video we're going to take a table tour. We're going to get really in-depth with the vocabulary of the table. We'll understand a lot more about the settings of the table, but most importantly it's about vocabulary in this one. Okay, so now let's take the table and we're going to dig a lot deeper into the table here. So first you'll notice that we've got the patient table here. It's got a little TBL in front of it, and you're going to see that that's a naming convention. And we'll talk a lot more about that, but TBL in front of the name of the table means that that's a table. You'll notice in your here inquiries you see it's QRY, and forms are FRM, reports are RPT. So we'll talk more about naming conventions later, but these are being named properly. This table is the patient table, and for me to open it I just double click that. Now when we look at a table, the table is pretty much just a big Excel spreadsheet. You can see it has columns and rows. Now in our table we don't call them columns, we call these fields. So right here I'm looking at the phone field. This field here would be the city field, maybe this one here you can see is the state field. So what we see is that we're focusing everything in on a field, not a column. Now crosswise we used to call these rows in Excel. Here in the database world we are going to call these a record. So a set of fields make up a record. Now a record, you can see I'm going to highlight this record right here about Steve Kervin. Now this record is all about him and him only. So unlike Excel where you might have some information here and then way out further on the sheet you have some other information that's not pertaining to that. That can't happen in the database world. Everything in the record must be about one particular event or person. Maybe it's a transaction or a piece of inventory. In this case everything on this line is about Steve and Steve only. So that's a record. So fields make up records, and now a set of records make up a table, because that's what we're looking at here as a table. And in this case we're looking at 51 records in this table. The way I can tell that really quick is I come down here and you'll see right here we've got a little navigation area. You can see that I'm on record 8 of 51 records. So this is record 8 of 51. I've got a little button here that allows me to move to the next record. I've got another one that allows me to go back, or I could go all the way back to the beginning or down to the bottom. This one here will allow me to add a new record. So fields make up records, records make up a table, and a couple of tables will make up a database. So fields to records, records to tables, tables to the database. These are some key concepts and terms I want you to make sure you feel very comfortable with. Now as we look at this particular table here, we can uniquely identify each record. We uniquely identify each record, and we do that by the patient ID number. Okay? So right here when I click on this record, 22-511 belongs to Daniel. And there is no other 22-511 in this column. There can't be, because this uniquely identifies that. Now we find that happening in the world all over the place. If you're a student, you've got a student ID. If you are at the telephone company, your telephone number is unique from everyone else's. That's your identifier. If you go to a business like LL Bean, you have an account number that it uniquely identifies you. So we uniquely identify customers. We uniquely identify students, patients, and everything else through a special field, and in this case we use patient ID. Now this field gets a special name. The name of this field becomes the primary key, and you actually see that appearing down here on our status bar because someone's put that in the description. So this is the primary key. Now the primary key uniquely identifies a record. A record is uniquely identified by the primary key. So you can hear that term in multiple different ways. So it's important to understand that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this table here for a second and put that away, and I'm going to grab this table here called Visit. Okay? So we open up the Visit table here. I got the patient table behind. Now in this table it looks exactly the same. We've got fields. We've got a comment field, a walk-in or a reason diagnosis field. We also have records. Now these records are based on someone's visit. So this is visit 1548. This is visit 1549. Okay? Each visit is unique. Therefore, the visit ID, we can see down here, becomes the primary key. Each visit is unique. Kind of like when you go to the supermarket and you get your receipt. At the end, your receipt has a number on it. It's going to be unique from everyone else's receipts. So that's your unique identifier or your primary key. But you'll notice that we use the patient ID over here. Okay? And the patient ID over here allows us to know who did this particular visit. So in this case, I look at this visit right here, 1538, and I know that belongs to 22500. I don't know who had the migraine, but that belonged to 22500. If I want to know who that is, I come to the patient table and I look up 2500 and I go, oh, that's me who has the migraine. Okay? So that allows me to understand how this works. I've got a separation. Now in this table, the patient ID is the primary key. But in this table, because it's linking the two together, we call that the foreign key. Notice down here we've got a setting for foreign key. Now the foreign key can appear more than once in the table. Only the primary key is unique. When I use it in another table to connect the two, we call that the foreign key. So let's finish off our section on tables here by taking a look behind the scenes. So what we're going to look at right here is coming here to the view. You'll see that right now I'm in the datasheet view. I'm going to come back here and I'm going to look at the design view. So by just clicking on this button once, it takes me to the design view, or I can use the drop down and go to design view. In the design view, what we're looking at is the names of the fields. So here you can see the names of the field, patient ID, last name, first name, parent. So it's the same type of information that we saw in the data view. The difference is here it's being displayed vertically and here it's being displayed horizontally. This is the Microsoft engineers having a little bit of fun with us people who are spatially challenged between vertically and horizontally. But it's the same information. Some of the things that we also notice back here is that you can have a data type, and we'll talk a lot more about those in the future. And then you can see that we have some description stuff here, like this is a primary key. In the other table we'd see that there was a foreign key. Here it's saying that this parent means it's either a parent or a guardian. Now we know that this description appears down here when I'm on this field. So if I click on the parent field, you'll see that it says parent or guardian down here on the status bar. So that's where our description shows up. If I wanted to add a field, I would click here and I would type in here test. We're just going to call this a test field, and I'll leave it as a short text field. And so you can see it asks me to save because I'm making a change. And then right here we have a new field called test, and I could put any type of information I wanted to in there from a text or numbers point of view. So that allows me to add a field. Now up here you'll also notice that we have table tools that can do the same thing. So I could, being on this field, see that this field is a 5, and right now it is its information is showing up here. Now if I wanted to come and click and add another field here, so I'm going to call this one, I'm going to make it again a short text, and we'll call this test 2 because it's the second field named test. But in here you can see my field size is 255, and I could begin making some changes here. Now later on this semester, when we get into actually designing tables and getting into there, I'm going to show you how to do everything back here in the design view. This is, I feel, a much more powerful tool here, and it allows you to work on things much quicker and easier. So in this video we took a really good look at the table. We realized that a table is a lot like an Excel spreadsheet. We have columns, which we now know are fields. We have rows, which we now understand are records. We also understand the concept of a record. It's about one particular person or event. Maybe it's a transaction, place, or product. But we know that everything about that one record has to be about one particular thing. We know we uniquely identify now records by the primary key, and we know that we can use the primary key in another table and it gets called the foreign key to link these two. Later on we're going to go real in depth on the relationships between tables.